Greetings, weary traveler, and welcome to another tranquil journey through the annals of history. Tonight, we shall embark on a quiet exploration of daily life in ancient Rome, focusing on a rather specific yet surprisingly mundane profession, that of a gladiator trainer. It's a role often romanticized, but in truth, much of it involved routine, meticulous observation, and the slow passage of time. So, settle in, dim your lights, perhaps turn on a gentle fan for that soothing background hum, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Let's ease into tonight's journey together as we delve into the methodical world of a Roman lanista. Our story begins not with a roar of the crowd, nor the clash of steel, but with the quiet, almost imperceptible shift of light in the pre-dawn Roman sky. You, as Lucius, a seasoned lanista, feel the familiar chill of the morning air seeping through the thin tunic as you rise from your modest cot. The straw mattress, though lumpy, has offered its usual measure of indifferent comfort. The sounds of the city are still muted, a distant murmur that has not yet swelled into its daily cacophony. You stretch, a slow, deliberate movement, feeling the familiar aches in your joints, a testament to years spent overseeing the physical exertions of others. The oil lamp flickers, casting long, dancing shadows across the Spartan room. Its faint, smoky scent mingles with the earthy aroma of the packed earth floor and the lingering smell of stale wine from last night's modest supper. You reach for a simple wooden bowl filled with water drawn from the communal well yesterday evening and splash it onto your face. The coolness is a mild shock, a gentle awakening. There is no urgency in your movements, only a steady, practiced rhythm. Each day unfolds with a predictable cadence, a series of small, repetitive tasks that form the bedrock of your existence. The gladiators, your charges, are still deep in their slumber, their heavy breathing a soft, rhythmic counterpoint to the distant sounds of the awakening city. You are the first to stir, the quiet sentinel of the Ludus, the gladiator school. The wooden door creaks softly as you push it open, stepping out into the narrow corridor. The air here is cooler, carrying the faint metallic tang of sweat and old blood, an ever-present reminder of the purpose of this place. Yet, even this scent is muted in the early hours, a ghost of the day's coming exertions. You walk down the corridor, your bare feet silent on the cold stone. The walls are rough, unadorned, bearing the marks of countless hands and the passage of time. A faint draft whispers through a crack in the wall, carrying with it the scent of damp earth from the courtyard. You pass the cells where the gladiators sleep, each door a heavy slab of wood, secured with a simple iron bar. There is no need for elaborate locks. The walls themselves are deterrent enough, and the discipline of the Ludus is ingrained. You pause for a moment, listening to the various sounds of sleep, a snore, a sigh, a restless shift. Each man, a potential champion, a potential casualty, but for now, merely a sleeping form. Your role is not to judge their fate, but to prepare them for it, meticulously, patiently. The first order of business is always the inspection of the training grounds. You step into the central courtyard, a large, open space enclosed by high walls. The ground is a mixture of compacted earth and sand, churned by countless footsteps and the impact of wooden weapons. In the dim light, it appears as a vast, empty stage, awaiting its actors. The wooden training posts, the palace, stand like silent sentinels, their surfaces scarred and splintered from endless blows. You run a hand over one, feeling the rough texture of the aged wood. It is solid, unyielding, a symbol of the relentless practice required. You check the ropes and pulleys used for various exercises, ensuring they are taut and secure. A loose rope, a splintered post, could mean an injury, a setback, a disruption to the carefully planned routine. Such things are to be avoided. The equipment shed is next. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of leather, wood, and metal. Helmets, shields, greaves, and various training weapons hang neatly on racks. Each piece is accounted for, each in its designated place. You pick up a wooden sword, a Ludus, feeling its familiar weight and balance. It is not sharp, not deadly, but it is the instrument of their daily toil, the extension of their will. You inspect the edges for splinters, the handle for cracks. Maintenance is key. A well-maintained tool is a reliable tool. The sun begins its slow ascent, painting the eastern sky with faint hues of gray and rose. The light is still weak, struggling to penetrate the high walls of the Ludus. The courtyard remains in shadow, a cool, quiet space. Soon the first of the gladiators will begin to stir, roused by the distant call of a rooster or the faint clatter from the kitchen. But for now, there is only the quiet solitude of your inspection, the methodical preparation for another day of training. The air is still, save for the rustle of a stray leaf caught in a corner, or the soft chirping of a bird from a nearby rooftop. You walk slowly, deliberately, your gaze sweeping over every detail, ensuring that all is in order. The perfection of the routine is paramount. It is in the small, consistent actions that the larger purpose is served. You consider the day ahead. The schedule is etched into your mind. Morning exercises, weapon drills, sparring sessions, a midday meal, more drills, perhaps some remedial work for those who struggled yesterday, and then the evening meal and early rest. It is a cycle that repeats, day after day, week after week, broken only by the occasional public spectacle in the arena. Even those events, dramatic as they may seem to the uninitiated, are merely the culmination of this quiet, repetitive work. The drama is for the spectators. For you, it is merely a test of your training, a demonstration of the efficacy of your methods. You move towards the kitchen, where the cook, a stout, perpetually grumbling man named Cato, is already stoking the fire. The smell of wood smoke and simmering grains begins to waft through the air, a more comforting aroma than the metallic tang of the training grounds. Cato offers a grunt of acknowledgement, his back to you as he stirs a large pot of pulse, a thick porridge that forms the staple of the gladiator's diet. It is simple, nutritious, and filling. There is no luxury here, only sustenance. You pour yourself a cup of lukewarm water and sit on a low wooden stool, observing the quiet preparations. The first rays of sunlight finally crest the high walls, painting a thin strip of gold across the top of the opposite wall. The shadows begin to recede, slowly, reluctantly. The Ludus begins to awaken, not with a sudden burst of activity, but with a gradual, almost imperceptible stirring. The day has begun, as it always does, with quiet purpose and methodical intent. You sip your water, feeling the cool liquid slide down your throat. The world outside the Ludus is bustling, vibrant, full of commerce and intrigue. But within these walls, time moves differently, governed by the rhythms of training, discipline, and the quiet pursuit of physical perfection. It is a small, self-contained universe, and you, Lucius, are its steady, unwavering center. The first gladiator emerges from his cell, a tall, powerfully built Thracian named Drusus. He moves with a slow, deliberate gait, his eyes still heavy with sleep. He offers a respectful nod, and you return it, a silent acknowledgement of the shared routine. Drusus heads towards the communal washing area, where cold water awaits. The shock of it will fully awaken him, preparing his body for the day's demands. Soon others will follow, each emerging from their slumber to face another day of disciplined exertion. The cycle continues, as it always has, and as it always will, a quiet testament to the enduring power of routine. The sun, now fully risen, bathes the courtyard in a warm, golden light. The air, once cool and still, now hums with the low murmur of activity. The gladiators, all awake now, are engaged in their morning ablutions, their voices a low rumble of conversation. You watch them from your vantage point near the kitchen, your gaze analytical, detached. You note the way they move, the subtle shifts in their posture, the way they carry themselves. A slight limp in one, a newfound confidence in another, a flicker of wariness in a third. These are the small details that inform your training, the subtle cues that tell you who needs to be pushed, who needs to be rested, who needs a quiet word of encouragement. The smell of the pulse, the porridge, is stronger now, a thick, earthy aroma that fills the air. Cato, the cook, ladles it into simple wooden bowls, his movements practiced, efficient. The gladiators line up, their demeanor subdued, respectful. There is no boisterous camaraderie here, no loud jests or horseplay. The discipline of the Ludus extends even to meal times. Each man takes his bowl and finds a spot to sit, either on the low benches that line the courtyard or on the ground itself. They eat in silence, their focus on the simple act of nourishment. You too take a bowl, your portion smaller than theirs. You eat slowly, your eyes still scanning the courtyard, your mind already planning the day's training schedule. The pulse is bland, but filling. It is fuel, nothing more. You notice a young recruit, a boy named Quintus, barely a man, picking at his food. He is new to the Ludus, his body still soft, his spirit still unbroken. He has not yet learned the value of this simple, life-sustaining meal. You make a mental note to have a word with him later. A gladiator who does not eat is a gladiator who will not last. After the meal, the gladiators clean their bowls and return them to the kitchen. There is a brief period of respite, a time for quiet contemplation or for tending to minor aches and pains. Some sit and stare at the high walls, their thoughts their own. Others stretch, their muscles already beginning to tighten in anticipation of the day's work. You walk among them, your presence a silent reminder of the coming exertion. You offer a quiet word to one, a nod to another. You are not their friend, not their confidant, but their lanista, their master. Your relationship with them is one of professional distance, of mutual respect born of shared purpose. The first training session of the day is always the same, a series of grueling physical exercises designed to build strength, stamina, and agility. The gladiators line up in the courtyard, their bodies already glistening with a light sheen of sweat. You stand before them, your voice calm, authoritative. You call out the exercises, your tone even, measured. They begin with running, their bare feet pounding the earth in a steady, rhythmic beat. They run in circles, their movements synchronized, their breathing controlled. You watch them, your eyes sharp, critical. You look for signs of fatigue, of weakness, of laziness. A man who falters in his running will falter in the arena. After the running, they move on to a series of calisthenics, jumping, squatting, lunging, their bodies moving in a fluid, coordinated dance. The sun beats down on them, the heat rising from the earth. The air is thick with the smell of sweat and dust. You walk among them, correcting their form, your voice a low, constant murmur. A hand on a shoulder here, a word of instruction there. The movements are repetitive, monotonous, but they are the foundation upon which all else is built. A gladiator's body is his weapon, his shield, his only true possession. It must be honed, perfected, pushed to its absolute limits. The exercises continue for what seems like an eternity, the gladiators' bodies pushed to the point of exhaustion. Their muscles burn, their lungs ache, their minds scream for release, but they do not stop. They cannot stop. To stop is to fail, and failure is not an option in the Ludus. You, Lucius, are the embodiment of this relentless drive. You are the unyielding force that pushes them beyond their perceived limits, that forges them into something more than they were before. Finally, you call a halt to the exercises. The gladiators collapse to the ground, their bodies trembling with fatigue. They lie there, gasping for air, the sun beating down on their exposed skin. You allow them a brief respite, a moment to recover, to gather their strength. But it is only a moment. The day is still young, and there is much work to be done. The next phase of the training involves the palace, the wooden training post. Each gladiator stands before his post, a wooden sword in his hand. You demonstrate the first series of strikes, your movements fluid, precise. You show them how to hold the sword, how to distribute their weight, how to generate power from their core. They watch you, their eyes focused, their minds absorbing every detail. Then they begin. The courtyard is filled with the sound of wood striking wood, a steady, rhythmic thudding that echoes off the high walls. The gladiators strike the palace again and again, their movements becoming more fluid, more powerful with each repetition. You walk among them, your voice a constant stream of correction and encouragement. You adjust a grip here, a stance there. You are a sculptor, and they are your clay. You are shaping them, molding them, transforming them from raw, unformed material into something beautiful, something deadly. The sun climbs higher in the sky, the heat becoming more intense. The gladiators' bodies are slick with sweat, their tunics clinging to their skin, but they do not falter. They continue to strike the palace, their movements becoming a blur of motion. The sound of the wooden swords is a constant, hypnotic rhythm, a testament to their unwavering dedication. You feel a sense of quiet satisfaction as you watch them. This is your life's work, your purpose. To take these men, these outcasts, these prisoners of war, and to transform them into something more. To give them a chance at glory, at a life beyond the confines of the Ludus. It is a strange, paradoxical existence, to prepare men for death in order to give them a chance at life. But it is the only life you know, the only life you have ever known. The midday meal is a welcome respite from the morning's exertions. The gladiators, their bodies weary but their spirits unbroken, gather once more in the courtyard. The sun is at its zenith, casting short, sharp shadows on the ground. The air is thick with the smell of dust and sweat, but also with the aroma of roasting meat, a rare treat. Cato, the cook, has prepared a simple but hearty meal of roasted pork, bread, and a thin, sour wine. The gladiators eat with a quiet reverence, savoring each mouthful. The meat is a luxury, a reward for their hard work. It is a reminder that their lives, though harsh, are not without their small pleasures. You too partake of the meal, your portion, as always, modest. You eat slowly, your mind already turning to the afternoon's training session. The morning was about building a foundation of strength and stamina. The afternoon will be about honing their skills, about practicing the art of combat. After the meal, the gladiators are given a short period of rest. Some find a shady spot in the courtyard and doze, their bodies craving the release of sleep. Others sit and talk in low tones, their voices a soft murmur. You walk among them, your presence a quiet, constant reminder of the discipline that governs their lives. You are not a harsh master, not a cruel one. You rule not by fear, but by respect. They respect your knowledge, your experience, your unwavering dedication to their training, and you in turn respect their courage, their resilience, their willingness to face death with a quiet dignity. The afternoon training session begins with sparring. The gladiators are paired off, each man armed with a wooden sword and a small, round shield. You watch them from the center of the courtyard, your eyes sharp, critical. You are not looking for a winner or a loser. You are looking for technique, for form, for the subtle nuances of combat. You call out instructions, your voice calm, authoritative. You tell them to focus on their footwork, on their balance, on the angle of their shields. You remind them that a gladiator's greatest weapon is not his sword, but his mind. The sparring is not a brawl. It is a carefully choreographed dance, a series of movements and counter-movements, of attacks and parries. The gladiators move with a fluid grace, their bodies a blur of motion, The sound of the wooden swords striking the shields is a sharp, percussive rhythm, a counterpoint to the soft thud of their bare feet on the earth. You see a young Retiarius, a gladiator, who fights with a net and trident, struggling against a more experienced secutor, a heavily armed gladiator with a large, rectangular shield. The Retiarius is quick, agile, but the secutor is a wall of defense, his shield deflecting every attack. You step in, your voice calm, measured. You show the Retiarius how to use his agility to his advantage, how to feint, how to create an opening. You show the secutor how to anticipate the Retiarius's movements, how to use his shield not just for defense, but also as a weapon. The two gladiators listen intently, their eyes focused on your every move. They are sponges, soaking up your knowledge, your experience. They are your legacy. The sparring continues for hours, the gladiators' bodies pushed to their limits. They are tired, they are sore, but they do not complain. They know that this is what it takes to survive in the arena. They know that every drop of sweat they shed in the Ludus is a drop of blood they will not shed in the Colosseum. As the sun begins to dip towards the horizon, you call an end to the sparring. The gladiators, their bodies bruised and battered, gather their equipment and return it to the shed. They move with a slow, weary gait, their faces etched with fatigue, but there is also a sense of accomplishment in their eyes, a quiet pride in a day's work well done. The evening meal is a simple affair. More pulse, more bread, more sour wine. The gladiators eat in silence, their bodies and minds too tired for conversation. After the meal, they are free to do as they please. Some go to their cells and sleep, their bodies craving the oblivion of rest. Others gather in the courtyard and talk in low tones, their voices a soft murmur in the gathering twilight. You sit on a low bench, a cup of wine in your hand, and watch them. The sky is a deep, velvety blue, studded with the first, faint stars. The air is cool and still, the sounds of the city a distant, muted roar. This is your world, this small, self-contained universe of the Ludus. It is a world of discipline, of routine, of quiet purpose. It is a world where men are forged into something more than they were before. It is a world where you, Lucius, are the master, the teacher, the guide. You take a sip of your wine, the sour liquid, a familiar comfort. You are a lanista, a trainer of gladiators. It is not a glamorous life, not a life of wealth or power, but it is a life of purpose, and for that you are grateful. You watch as the last of the gladiators drifts off to their cells, the courtyard now empty and silent. The only sound is the soft chirping of crickets and the distant murmur of the city. You are alone with your thoughts, with the quiet satisfaction of a day's work well done. You have done your duty. You have prepared your men for their fate, whatever it may be, and in doing so, you have found your own quiet, unassuming place in the grand, chaotic tapestry of Rome. And so, as the Roman night deepens and the stars begin their slow, silent march across the heavens, we leave Lucius to his quiet contemplation. The sounds of the ancient city fade into the background, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The meticulous details of the Ludus, the scent of dust and leather, the steady thud of wooden swords, all begin to recede, dissolving into the soft edges of memory. Allow these images to drift, unhurried, through your mind, like clouds across a summer sky. There is no need for urgency, no need for effort. Simply let the gentle current of this quiet history carry you further into repose. May your dreams be as calm and as ordered as Lucius's day, filled with the peaceful echoes of a world long past. Good night, and may you find deep, restorative sleep. You are looking for the subtle tells, the flicker of an eye, the shift of a foot that betray a gladiator's intentions. You are looking for the moment of hesitation, the instant of doubt that can mean the difference between life and death in the arena. The sparring is a laboratory, a place where you can experiment with different techniques, different strategies, different combinations of gladiators. You pit a nimble Retiarius against a powerful Murmillo, a heavily armed Secutor against a quick Thracian. You watch how they adapt, how they learn, how they overcome their disadvantages. You are a general, and they are your soldiers. You are preparing them for a war that will be fought not on a battlefield, but in the sands of the Colosseum. The sun begins to cast long shadows across the courtyard, the air growing cooler. The gladiators are tired, their bodies aching, their minds numb with fatigue, but they do not stop. They continue to spar, their movements slower now, more deliberate, but no less focused. They are driven by a force that is greater than their own exhaustion, a force that is born of a desire to survive, to triumph, to achieve a measure of glory in a life that is otherwise devoid of it. You watch them, a sense of pride swelling in your chest. These are your men. You have trained them. You have molded them. You have prepared them for their destiny. They are a reflection of your skill, your dedication, your unwavering belief in the power of discipline and hard work. As the last rays of sunlight fade from the sky, you call an end to the training. The gladiators, their bodies slick with sweat and grime, gather their equipment and trudge wearily to the washing area. They move with the slow, deliberate gait of men who have pushed their bodies to the absolute limit. The evening meal is a quiet, somber affair. The gladiators eat in silence, their faces etched with a mixture of fatigue and satisfaction. They have survived another day. They have pushed themselves to the brink and have come back stronger. They are one day closer to the arena, one day closer to their chance at glory. After the meal, the Ludus settles into a quiet hush. The gladiators retire to their cells, their bodies and minds craving the sweet release of sleep. The courtyard is empty now, bathed in the soft, silvery light of the moon. You sit on a low bench, a cup of wine in your hand, and gaze up at the star-studded sky. The sounds of the city are a distant murmur, a faint, almost imperceptible hum. You are alone with your thoughts, with the quiet satisfaction of a day's work well done. You have done your duty. You have prepared your men for their fate, whatever it may be, and in doing so, you have found your own quiet, unassuming place in the grand, chaotic tapestry of Rome. You think about the different types of gladiators under your charge. The Retiarius, with his net and trident, a fisherman of men. He is all about speed and agility, about ensnaring his opponent and finishing him with a quick, precise thrust. The Secutor, his opponent, is the opposite. He is a tank, a wall of steel, his body encased in heavy armor, his face hidden behind a smooth, featureless helmet. He is all about power and relentless pressure, about slowly, methodically wearing down his opponent until he can deliver the final fatal blow. Then there is the Mormillo, with his fish-crested helmet and his large, rectangular shield. He is a versatile fighter, equally adept at offense and defense. He is a master of the short sword, the gladius, the weapon that gave the gladiator his name. And there is the Thracian, with his small round shield and his curved sword, the Psyche. He is a whirlwind of motion, a dervish of death, his attacks coming from all angles, his movements unpredictable, chaotic. Each type of gladiator requires a different training regimen, a different approach. You cannot train a retiarius the same way you train a secutor. You must understand their strengths, their weaknesses, their unique fighting styles. You must tailor your training to their individual needs, to their specific body types, to their particular temperaments. It is a complex, challenging task, but it is one that you relish. It is a puzzle, a game of strategy, a test of your knowledge and your intuition. You take another sip of your wine, the sour liquid a familiar comfort. You are a lanista, a trainer of gladiators. It is a strange, paradoxical profession. You are a purveyor of death, a merchant of violence, but you are also a teacher, a mentor, a guide. You take these men, these outcasts, these condemned criminals, and you give them a chance at a new life, a life of glory, of honor, of a strange, brutal kind of freedom. You give them a chance to become something more than they were before, to transcend their circumstances, to achieve a measure of immortality in the fleeting memory of the crowd. It is a heavy responsibility, but it is one that you bear with a quiet, unassuming dignity. You are a small, insignificant cog in the vast, complex machine of Rome, but you are a cog that is essential to the functioning of that machine. You are a part of the spectacle, a part of the grand, bloody theater that is the Roman games. And in your own small, quiet way, you are a part of the history of Rome. You finish your wine and rise from the bench. The moon is high in the sky now, its silvery light casting long, dark shadows across the courtyard. The Ludus is silent, the only sound the soft chirping of crickets. It is time to sleep. Tomorrow will be another day, another cycle of training, another step on the long, arduous road to the arena. You walk to your small Spartan room, the familiar aches in your joints, a dull, constant reminder of your age. You lie down on your cot, the straw mattress rustling softly beneath you. You close your eyes and listen to the sounds of the night, the distant murmur of the city, the gentle chirping of the crickets, the soft, rhythmic breathing of the sleeping gladiators. They are the sounds of your life, the sounds of your world. And as you drift off to sleep, you are at peace. Let us delve a little deeper into the specificities of the gladiator types. For each presented a unique set of challenges and required a tailored approach to training. Consider the Murmillo, for instance. His helmet, often adorned with a fish crest, was heavy, restricting his vision to a narrow slit. This meant his training had to emphasize spatial awareness, the ability to sense an opponent's presence and movement without direct sight. You would spend hours with a Murmillo, guiding him through drills where he would parry unseen blows, relying solely on the sound of the wooden sword whistling past his ear, or the subtle shift in the air. His large, rectangular shield, the scutum, was both a formidable defense and a cumbersome weight. He had to learn to wield it, not just as a barrier, but as an extension of his body, using its broad surface to push, to block, to create openings. The footwork for a murmillo was less about agile evasion and more about rooted stability, a slow, deliberate advance, a wall of iron and muscle. You would observe their stance, correcting the slightest imbalance, ensuring their weight was perfectly distributed, ready to absorb impact. The gladius, his short sword, was a thrusting weapon, designed for close quarters combat. The murmillo's drills would focus on short, powerful thrusts, aimed at the vulnerable points of an opponent's armor or the exposed flesh beneath. Repetition was key. Hundreds, thousands of thrusts against the palace, until the movement became instinctual, a reflex. The sweat would pour from their bodies, soaking their tunics, mingling with the dust of the arena. Yet, they would continue, their faces grim, their eyes fixed on the wooden post, their minds focused on the precise angle of the blade, the depth of the thrust. This was the quiet, unglamorous work that forged a murmillo. Then there was the Thracian, a stark contrast to the murmillo. His small round shield, the parmula, offered less protection, demanding greater agility and speed. His helmet, often featuring a griffin's head, was also restrictive, but his fighting style compensated with rapid, unpredictable movements. The sicca, his curved sword, was designed for slashing, for hooking around shields, for inflicting shallow but debilitating wounds. Training a Thracian involved endless drills in evasion, in quick lateral movements, in feints and dodges. You would have them practice against multiple opponents, forcing them to constantly shift, to never stay in one place for too long. Their footwork was a dance, a constant flow of motion, designed to confuse and disorient the enemy. You would watch their eyes, ensuring they were constantly scanning, anticipating, reacting. The psycha drills were about precision and speed, a blur of motion, a series of rapid slashes and parries. The sound of the sicca cutting through the air was a sharp, almost musical hiss, a testament to the speed of their movements. They would practice against the palace, not with brute force, but with a delicate, almost surgical precision, aiming for the weak points, the exposed joints. The Thracians' training was a study in controlled chaos, a constant push and pull between aggression and evasion. It was a demanding style, requiring immense stamina and mental fortitude. You would see them after hours of drills, their bodies trembling, their breath coming in ragged gasps, but their eyes still burning with a fierce, unyielding determination. The retiarius, the netman, was perhaps the most unconventional of all. He fought with a weighted net, the reti, and a trident, the fascina. He wore minimal armor, often just a shoulder guard, the gallerus, and a manica on his arm. His vulnerability was his strength, forcing him to rely on speed, cunning, and the element of surprise. Training a retiarius was a delicate art. It involved mastering the throw of the net, a complex skill that required perfect timing and coordination. You would spend hours with them, practicing the throw over and over again until the net unfurled perfectly, landing precisely where intended. The trident was his secondary weapon, used for thrusting, for keeping an opponent at bay, for finishing a caught foe. His footwork was a constant dance, a series of retreats and advances, always seeking to maintain distance, to create an opening for the net. You would have them practice against gladiators armed with swords and shields, forcing them to evade, to frustrate, to wear down their opponent before delivering the decisive throw. The Retiarius's training was a psychological battle, as much as a physical one. He had to learn patience, the ability to wait for the perfect moment, the courage to face a heavily armed opponent with little more than a net and a spear. You would observe their demeanor, their temperament, ensuring they possessed the calm, calculating mind required for such a precarious fighting style. The sound of the net swishing through the air, the dull thud of the trident striking the palace, these were the sounds of a Retiarius being forged. And then there was his traditional opponent, the secutor, the chaser. The secutor was designed to fight the Retiarius, his armor streamlined to prevent the net from catching. His helmet was smooth, almost featureless, with only 2 small eye holes, limiting his vision but protecting him from the net. His shield was large and rectangular, similar to the Murmillo's, but often slightly curved to deflect the net. His weapon was a short sword, the gladius. Training a secutor involved drills focused on relentless pursuit, on closing the distance with the agile Retiarius, on maintaining a steady, unwavering advance. You would have them practice moving quickly, while maintaining their defensive posture, their shield always between them and their opponent. They had to learn to ignore the taunts and feints of the Retiarius, to focus solely on their objective, to get close enough to strike. The sound of a secutor's heavy boots pounding the earth, the rhythmic clang of his armor, these were the sounds of an inexorable force. You would emphasize patience, the ability to wait for the Retiarius to make a mistake, to tire himself out. The secutor's victory was often a slow, methodical grind, a war of attrition. Beyond the individual training of each gladiator type, there was the overarching discipline of the Ludus itself. The day was structured with an almost monastic rigor. After the morning exercises and weapon drills, there would be a period dedicated to physical therapy and massage. The gladiators' bodies were their most valuable assets, and their care was paramount. You would oversee the masseurs, often older, retired gladiators themselves, who understood the nuances of muscle strain and injury. They would work tirelessly, kneading sore muscles, applying poultices of herbs and oils, ensuring that each gladiator was as ready as possible for the next day's exertions. The air in the massage room would be thick with the scent of olive oil and medicinal herbs, a quiet, almost reverent atmosphere. The gladiators would lie on simple wooden benches, their eyes closed, their bodies yielding to the skilled hands of the masseurs. You would walk among them, observing, occasionally offering a quiet word of advice to a masseur, or a gentle inquiry to a gladiator about a particular ache or pain. These were the moments when you saw them not as fighting machines, but as men, vulnerable and in need of care. The midday meal, as we noted, was a simple affair, but the preparation of it was a significant undertaking. Cato the cook was a master of efficiency, managing a small team of slaves who would grind grain, chop vegetables, and tend to the fires. The kitchen was a bustling hub of activity, a symphony of clanking pots, sizzling meat, and the low murmur of voices. You would occasionally visit the kitchen, not to interfere, but to ensure that the gladiators' dietary needs were being met. Their diet was carefully balanced, designed to provide maximum energy and strength. It was rich in grains, legumes, and lean meats, with occasional treats of fruit or honey. There was no room for indulgence, only for sustenance. The afternoon would often be dedicated to more specialized training. Some gladiators might practice their specific fighting styles against a wooden dummy, a pell, which allowed for more aggressive and uninhibited strikes than sparring with a live opponent. Others might engage in mock combat, using blunted weapons to refine their tactics and teamwork. For those gladiators destined for group combat, the training would involve intricate formations and coordinated movements, a ballet of violence. You would stand on a raised platform, overseeing the entire scene, your voice carrying across the courtyard, offering instructions, corrections, encouragement. The sun would beat down, relentless, but the gladiators would continue, their bodies moving with a practiced grace, their minds focused on the task at hand. The dust would rise in clouds, coating everything in a fine, gritty layer. The air would be filled with the grunts of exertion, the clang of wood on wood, the rhythmic pounding of feet. It was a symphony of effort, a testament to the relentless pursuit of physical perfection. In the late afternoon, there would often be a period of intellectual training. While many gladiators were unlettered, some possessed a basic education, and all benefited from understanding the psychology of combat, the history of the games, and the expectations of the crowd. You would gather them in a shaded corner of the courtyard, or in a small, cool room, and speak to them in a low, measured tone. You would discuss strategy, the importance of maintaining composure under pressure, the value of a well-timed feint. You would recount tales of legendary gladiators, not to inspire them to glory, but to illustrate points of technique or discipline. It was a quiet, contemplative time, a chance for their minds to engage after hours of physical exertion. The light would begin to fade, casting long shadows across the room. The air would grow cooler, carrying the faint scent of evening flowers from a nearby garden. The gladiators would listen intently, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of an oil lamp. They understood that knowledge too was a weapon, a tool that could give them an edge in the arena. As evening approached, the Ludus would slowly wind down. The gladiators would gather for their final meal of the day, a quieter, more subdued affair than the midday feast. The conversation would be minimal, their bodies and minds weary from the day's exertions. After the meal, they would be allowed a period of leisure, a chance to relax before retiring to their cells. Some might play a quiet game of dice, their voices a low murmur. Others might simply sit and stare into the gathering darkness, their thoughts, their own. You would walk among them, observing, ensuring that the peace of the Ludus was maintained. There was no place for boisterous behavior, no room for arguments or disputes. The discipline of the Ludus extended even to their leisure time. You would then retire to your own small room, the day's work complete. You would sit at your simple wooden table, a scroll in your hand, perhaps a treatise on military tactics or a philosophical text. You would read by the flickering light of an oil lamp, the quiet hum of the city, a distant lullaby. The words would blur before your eyes, your mind slowly drifting into a state of peaceful contemplation. You would reflect on the day's training, on the progress of each gladiator, on the challenges that lay ahead. It was a life of routine, of repetition, of quiet dedication. It was a life that demanded patience, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to the task at hand. And in this quiet, unassuming life, you found a profound sense of purpose. The sounds of the night would begin to assert themselves. The chirping of crickets, the distant howl of a dog, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. These were the sounds that accompanied your thoughts, the soundtrack to your quiet existence. You would eventually extinguish the lamp, plunging the room into darkness. You would lie down on your cot, the straw mattress rustling softly beneath you. The familiar aches in your joints would be a dull, comforting throb, a reminder of a day well spent. You would close your eyes and drift off to sleep, your mind filled with the images of gladiators, of training, of the quiet, methodical rhythm of life in the Ludus. This was your world, Lucius, a world of ordered existence, of predictable cycles, of the slow, steady march of time. It was a world that to the casual observer might seem monotonous, even boring. But to you it was a world of profound meaning, a world where the smallest details held the greatest significance. It was a world that prepared men for their fate, and in doing so, gave meaning to your own. The early morning light would once again begin to filter through the cracks in the walls, painting faint patterns on the floor. The distant sounds of the city would begin to stir, slowly, reluctantly, and you, Lucius, would awaken, ready to begin another day, another cycle, another quiet journey through the methodical world of a Roman lanista. The cycle of life in the Ludus was not merely about physical training. It was also about the meticulous management of resources. Every piece of equipment, from the heaviest shield to the smallest buckle, had to be accounted for, maintained and repaired. You, as lanista, were ultimately responsible for this inventory. After the gladiators had retired for the night, you would often spend a quiet hour in the equipment shed, inspecting each item. You would run your hands over the leather straps of a manica, checking for signs of wear. You would examine the edges of a gladius, ensuring it was free of nicks and rust. The helmets, with their intricate designs and heavy construction, required particular attention. You would check the fastenings, the padding, the integrity of the metal. Each scratch, each dent, told a story of a training session, a sparring match, a moment of impact. These were not just objects, they were extensions of the gladiators themselves, vital to their survival. The air in the shed was always cool and dry, preserving the metal and leather. The faint scent of oil and beeswax mingled with the lingering aroma of sweat and iron. It was a sanctuary of sorts, a place where the tools of their trade were given the respect they deserved. You would make notes on small wax tablets, detailing repairs needed, replacements required. A broken strap today could mean a fatal injury tomorrow. This meticulous attention to detail was not glamorous, but it was essential. It was another thread in the intricate tapestry of the Ludus, a quiet testament to the unseen work that underpinned the spectacle of the arena. The financial aspects of running a Ludus were also a constant, if unexciting, concern. While the gladiators themselves were often slaves or condemned criminals, the costs of their upkeep, their food, their equipment, and the wages of the support staff were considerable. You would spend evenings poring over ledgers, tallying expenses, calculating potential earnings from future bouts. The numbers were rarely exciting, often a slow, steady stream of debits and credits. There were no sudden windfalls, only the careful management of a complex enterprise. The ink on the papyrus would be dark against the pale background, the scratching of your stylus the only sound in the quiet room. You would meticulously record every expenditure, every receipt, every detail of the Ludus's financial health. It was a task that required patience, precision, and a keen eye for detail. The future of the Ludus, and by extension, the lives of your gladiators, depended on your ability to manage these mundane but vital affairs. The relationship with the local suppliers was another aspect of your daily routine. The grain merchant, the butcher, the blacksmith, the oil vendor, each had to be dealt with, their prices negotiated, their deliveries scheduled. These were not grand diplomatic negotiations, but rather quiet, often protracted discussions over small quantities and minor discounts. You would visit the bustling Roman markets, the air thick with the shouts of vendors and the smells of spices and fresh produce. You would move through the crowds with a quiet purpose, your eyes scanning for the best quality, the most reasonable price. The haggling was a ritual, a slow dance of offer and counter-offer, a test of patience and resolve. It was a far cry from the drama of the arena, but it was just as essential to the continued operation of the Ludus. The weight of the bronze coins in your purse, the rustle of the papyrus receipts, these were the tangible realities of your economic life. You were a businessman as much as a trainer, a manager as much as a mentor. The quiet hum of commerce, the steady flow of goods and services, these were the unseen forces that kept the Ludus alive. The health and well-being of the gladiators extended beyond physical training and diet. It also encompassed their mental state. While you were not a philosopher, you understood the importance of morale. A gladiator who was despondent, who had lost his will to fight, was a liability. You would spend time with them, not engaging in deep philosophical discussions, but offering quiet words of encouragement, listening to their concerns, addressing their minor grievances. Sometimes, it was simply a matter of allowing them to vent their frustrations, to speak of their homes, their families, the lives they had left behind. You would sit with them in the courtyard, the sun warming your face, the sounds of the city a distant hum. You would offer a sympathetic ear, a steady presence. It was a subtle form of care, a quiet acknowledgement of their humanity. These were not moments of drama or excitement, but rather small, intimate exchanges, threads in the fabric of their shared existence. The psychological aspect of their training was as important as the physical. You had to instill in them a sense of purpose, a reason to endure the hardship, a belief in their own strength. It was a slow, painstaking process, built on trust and consistency. The quiet confidence in your voice, the steady gaze in your eyes, these were the tools you used to shape their minds, just as you shaped their bodies. The gladiators, in turn, would respond to this quiet care. They would train harder, fight with more determination, knowing that their lanista, their master, was not just a taskmaster, but also a protector, a guide. The bonds formed in the Ludus were not those of friendship, but of a shared destiny, a mutual reliance. It was a complex ecosystem, a delicate balance of power and responsibility, all orchestrated by your quiet, unwavering hand. The passing of seasons brought subtle changes to the routine of the Ludus. In the heat of summer, training would begin earlier, before the sun reached its full intensity, and would often conclude with a longer midday break. The gladiators would seek the shade of the porticos, their bodies glistening with sweat, their breathing heavy. You would ensure that ample water was available, drawn from the cool depths of the well. The air would be thick with the scent of dry earth and the distant hum of cicadas. In the cooler months of autumn and spring, the training schedule would be more extended, allowing for longer, more intense sessions. The air would be crisp, invigorating, and the gladiators' movements would be sharper, more energetic. The sounds of their training would carry further, echoing off the high walls of the Ludus. In winter, when the air was cold and damp, and the occasional flurry of snow might dust the rooftops, training would often move indoors, to a covered area where the gladiators could continue their drills without succumbing to the elements. The light would be dimmer, the air colder, but the discipline remained unwavering. Each season presented its own challenges, its own subtle adjustments to the rhythm of life in the Ludus. You, Lucius, were the constant, the steady hand that guided them through these seasonal shifts, ensuring that their training remained consistent, their bodies prepared, their spirits resilient. The passage of time was marked not by grand events, but by these small cyclical changes, the slow, steady turning of the year. And in this predictable rhythm, there was a quiet comfort, a sense of continuity in a world that was often chaotic and unpredictable. The sounds of the changing seasons, the gentle rustle of autumn leaves, the crisp bite of winter air, the fresh scent of spring blossoms, these were the subtle cues that marked the passage of your days, the quiet backdrop to your unwavering dedication. The occasional visits from Roman officials or potential patrons were another aspect of your duties. These were not frequent occurrences, but when they happened, they required a different kind of attention. You would ensure the Ludus was presented in its best light, the gladiators clean and well-groomed, their equipment polished. The conversations would be formal, polite, focused on the gladiators' prowess, their potential, their suitability for upcoming games. You would speak in a measured tone, highlighting their strengths, downplaying any weaknesses. It was a delicate dance of diplomacy, a quiet negotiation of expectations and possibilities. The officials would walk through the courtyard, their rich togas rustling, their expressions often impassive. They would observe the gladiators with a detached curiosity, assessing their physical attributes, their discipline. You would answer their questions with a quiet confidence, your knowledge of each gladiator encyclopedic. The air would be filled with the faint scent of their perfumes, a stark contrast to the earthy aromas of the Ludus. These visits were brief, fleeting moments of external intrusion into your self-contained world, but they were necessary, for they were the bridge between the quiet discipline of the Ludus and the roaring spectacle of the arena. They were the moments when the unseen work of your days was presented to the outside world, a quiet demonstration of the meticulous preparation that lay behind the grand display. And as quickly as they arrived, the officials would depart, leaving behind only the lingering scent of their presence and the quiet hum of anticipation for the next games. You would then return to your routine, the brief interruption fading into the predictable rhythm of your days. The sun would continue its slow journey across the sky, the shadows would lengthen, and the gladiators would continue their training, their movements a testament to your unwavering dedication. The passage of days, weeks, and months blurred into a continuous stream of effort. Each sunrise brought the promise of another day of training, another opportunity to refine, to perfect, to prepare. Each sunset brought the quiet satisfaction of a day's work well done, a small victory in the ongoing battle against entropy and decay. You, Lucius, were the steady hand, the unwavering presence, the quiet force that guided this small universe. Your life was a testament to the power of routine, the beauty of discipline, the profound meaning found in the meticulous pursuit of a singular purpose. And as the years accumulated, each one adding another layer of experience, another subtle nuance to your understanding, you became not just a lanista, but a living embodiment of the Ludus itself. The walls of the training school, the worn wooden posts, the scarred earth of the courtyard, they were all extensions of your own quiet, enduring spirit. The sounds of the gladiators' breathing, the clang of their weapons, the murmur of their voices, these were the symphony of your life, a constant, rhythmic reminder of your unwavering dedication. And as you aged, your movements becoming slower, more deliberate, your gaze remained as sharp, as analytical as ever. You were a sentinel of tradition, a guardian of the ancient ways, a quiet observer of the endless cycle of training, combat, and the relentless march of time. The Roman world outside might rage with political intrigue, with wars and conquests, with the rise and fall of emperors. But within the walls of your Ludus, there was a quiet constancy, a predictable rhythm that transcended the chaos of the outside world. Here in this small, self-contained universe, you found your purpose, your meaning, your quiet place in the grand, unfolding drama of history. And as the final rays of the setting sun painted the western sky with hues of orange and purple, you would sit on your customary bench, a cup of wine in your hand, and watch the gladiators retire to their cells. The courtyard would grow silent, the air cool and still, and in that quiet solitude, you would find a profound sense of peace, a deep, abiding contentment with the life you had chosen, the path you had walked. The stars would begin to emerge, one by one, twinkling in the vast, dark expanse of the Roman night. And as you drifted off to sleep, your mind would be filled with the quiet echoes of the day, the gentle rhythm of training, the steady pulse of life in the Ludus. This was your legacy, Lucius, a legacy not of grand victories or heroic deeds, but of quiet dedication, of unwavering discipline, of the profound beauty found in the mundane, the repetitive, the slow, steady march of time. It was a legacy that would endure, not in the annals of history, but in the countless lives you had touched, the countless gladiators you had shaped, the countless days you had lived with quiet purpose. And as the Roman night deepened and the stars began their slow, silent march across the heavens, we leave Lucius to his quiet contemplation. The sounds of the ancient city fade into the background, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The meticulous details of the Ludus, the scent of dust and leather, the steady thud of wooden swords, all begin to recede, dissolving into the soft edges of memory. Allow these images to drift, unhurried, through your mind, like clouds across a summer sky. There is no need for urgency, no need for effort. Simply let the gentle current of this quiet history carry you further into repose. May your dreams be as calm and as ordered as Lucius's day, filled with the peaceful echoes of a world long past. Good night, and may you find deep restorative sleep. Let us consider the other inhabitants of the Ludus, for Lucius the lanista was not alone in his endeavors. There was, of course, Cato, the cook, a man whose gruff exterior belied a meticulous attention to the gladiator's dietary needs. His days began even earlier than Lucius's, in the deep pre-dawn darkness, stoking the fires of the kitchen hearth. The rhythmic thud of his pestle grinding grains for the morning pulse was a constant, comforting sound, a counterpoint to the distant sounds of the awakening city. You would often find him humming a tuneless, ancient melody as he stirred the large cauldrons, his brow furrowed in concentration. The kitchen, a separate building within the Ludus compound, was a world unto itself, filled with the earthy aromas of simmering vegetables, roasting meats, and freshly baked bread. The slaves who assisted Cato moved with a quiet efficiency, their movements practiced and precise. They understood the importance of their role, for a well-fed gladiator was a strong gladiator, and a strong gladiator was a valuable asset. The sounds emanating from the kitchen were a constant low hum of activity, the clatter of earthenware pots, the sizzle of fat dripping onto hot coals, the soft murmur of voices as Cato issued instructions. These were the sounds of sustenance, the quiet machinery that fueled the physical exertions of the gladiators. Then there were the medici, the healers, often Greek or Egyptian, whose knowledge of anatomy and herbal remedies was invaluable. Their quarters, a small, clean room adjacent to the training grounds, smelled perpetually of antiseptic herbs and balms. Their days were spent tending to the inevitable injuries that arose from training: sprains, cuts, bruises, and the occasional broken bone. You would consult with them frequently, discussing the recovery progress of a gladiator, the efficacy of a particular treatment, the prognosis for a return to training. Their voices were always calm, their movements gentle, a stark contrast to the rough and tumble of the training grounds. The gladiators, for their part, held the medici in high regard, for it was their skill that often meant the difference between a swift recovery and a lingering disability, or worse. The quiet murmur of their consultations, the soft rustle of bandages, the faint scent of medicinal herbs, these were the sounds and smells of healing, a necessary counterpoint to the violence of their profession. The armorer, a grizzled veteran named Vulcanus, was another indispensable member of the Ludus staff. His workshop, a smoky, clangorous space at the far end of the compound, was a symphony of hammers striking metal, the hiss of quenching steel, and the rasp of files. He was a master craftsman, capable of repairing damaged helmets, forging new greaves, and sharpening the edges of swords with an almost artistic precision. You would spend hours with him, discussing the nuances of gladiator armor, the balance of a particular sword, the optimal weight distribution of a shield. He would often work late into the night, the rhythmic clang of his hammer echoing through the silent Ludus, a constant reminder of the meticulous preparation required for the arena. The smell of hot metal and coal smoke clung to his clothes, a permanent aura. The gladiators themselves would often visit his workshop, not just for repairs, but to simply observe him at work, to feel the weight of a newly forged piece of armor, to run their fingers along the sharp edge of a gladius. It was a place of creation, of transformation, where raw materials were shaped into instruments of war. The sounds of his workshop were a constant, reassuring presence, a testament to the enduring power of craftsmanship. The pedagogues, often retired gladiators themselves, were responsible for the day-to-day instruction and supervision of the younger recruits. They were the ones who taught the basic stances, the fundamental parries, the proper way to hold a sword or shield. Their voices, though firm, were patient, their movements slow and deliberate as they demonstrated each technique. You would observe their lessons, occasionally offering a correction or a suggestion, but mostly allowing them the autonomy to impart their wisdom. They understood the psychology of the young recruits, the fear, the apprehension, the slow dawning of understanding. They were the bridge between the raw recruit and the seasoned gladiator, guiding them through the initial, often awkward stages of their training. The sounds of their instruction, the rhythmic thud of wooden swords, the grunts of exertion from the recruits, these were the sounds of learning, of growth, of transformation. The slaves who maintained the Ludus, cleaning the cells, sweeping the courtyard, carrying water, were the unseen backbone of the entire operation. Their work was constant, repetitive, and often thankless. Yet without their tireless efforts, the Ludus would quickly descend into chaos. You would oversee their work, ensuring that the standards of cleanliness and order were maintained. Their movements were quiet, efficient, their faces often impassive. They were a constant, almost invisible presence, their labor essential to the smooth functioning of the Ludus. The soft swish of brooms, the clatter of buckets, the distant murmur of their conversations, these were the background sounds of the Ludus, the quiet rhythm of daily life. The entire Ludus, therefore, was a complex ecosystem, a miniature society, each member playing a vital role in the grand, intricate dance of gladiator training. You, Lucius, were the conductor of this orchestra, the quiet force that brought harmony to its disparate elements. Your days were a constant cycle of observation, instruction, and management, a meticulous dance of details. The sun would rise and set, the seasons would change, and the gladiators would come and go, but the rhythm of the Ludus, guided by your steady hand, would remain constant. It was a life of quiet purpose, a life dedicated to the meticulous preparation of men for a fate that was both glorious and terrifying. And in this dedication you found your own quiet, unassuming place in the vast, unfolding tapestry of Roman life. The sounds of the Ludus, therefore, were a symphony of routine, the distant clang of Vulcanus's hammer, the soft murmur of the Medici, the rhythmic thud of Cato's pestle, the patient voices of the pedagogues, and the constant, almost imperceptible hum of the slaves at work. These were the sounds that filled your days, the soundtrack to your quiet existence. They were the sounds of a world ordered, disciplined, and meticulously maintained. The air, too, carried its own unique blend of aromas, the metallic tang of sweat and iron from the training grounds, the earthy scent of pulse from the kitchen, the antiseptic fragrance of herbs from the Medici's room, and the smoky aroma of Vulcanus's forge. These were the smells of the Ludus, a complex olfactory tapestry that spoke of hard work, healing, sustenance, and craftsmanship. And as you walked through the compound, your senses would absorb these details, each one a small piece of the larger puzzle that was your life. The visual landscape of the Ludus was equally rich in its quiet details. The rough, unadorned stone walls, bearing the marks of countless hands and the passage of time, the worn wooden benches in the courtyard, smoothed by the countless bodies that had rested upon them, the splintered palace, a testament to endless hours of practice, the glint of sunlight on a newly polished helmet, the dull sheen of aged leather, the subtle shifts in light and shadow as the sun moved across the sky, painting the compound with ever-changing hues. These were the sights that filled your days, the visual grammar of your existence. Each detail, no matter how small, contributed to the overall atmosphere of quiet purpose, of meticulous preparation. The gladiators themselves, in their various stages of training, presented a constantly evolving tableau. The raw recruits, their bodies still soft, their movements hesitant, slowly transforming into hardened warriors. The seasoned veterans, their bodies scarred, their movements fluid and confident, a testament to years of discipline. You would observe their posture, their gait, the way they carried themselves, each a subtle indicator of their progress, their state of mind. The subtle changes in their musculature, the gradual hardening of their physiques. These were the quiet victories that you, as lanista, observed and appreciated. The very ground beneath your feet, the compacted earth and sand of the courtyard, bore the imprint of countless footsteps, a silent record of the relentless training. It was a living canvas, constantly being reshaped by the daily exertions of the gladiators. The dust that rose from it, fine and gritty, was a constant reminder of the physical effort expended. Even the sky above, framed by the high walls of the Ludus, offered its own quiet drama. The slow march of clouds, the changing hues of dawn and dusk, the silent twinkle of stars at night. These were the subtle, almost imperceptible details that formed the backdrop to your life, the quiet beauty that permeated your world. The occasional sounds from outside the Ludus would filter in, muted and distant. The rumble of carts on the cobbled streets, the shouts of street vendors, the laughter of children, the distant roar of the crowd from the Colosseum on a day of games. These were the echoes of the larger Roman world, a world that was both intimately connected to and yet distinctly separate from the self-contained universe of the Ludus. You would hear these sounds, but they would not distract you. Your focus remained firmly within the walls of your domain, on the meticulous details of gladiator training. They were merely background noise, a gentle reminder of the world beyond, but not a call to engage with it. Your purpose was here, within these walls, in the quiet, methodical preparation of men for their fate. The passage of time within the Ludus was marked not by the grand events of Roman history, but by the smaller, more intimate cycles of daily routine. The rising and setting of the sun, the changing of the seasons, the progression of gladiators through their training, these were the markers of your existence. Each day was a repetition, yet each day brought its own subtle variations, its own small challenges, its own quiet satisfactions. It was a life of predictable rhythms, a life that offered a profound sense of continuity and purpose, and in this continuity, you found a quiet strength, an unwavering resolve. The very air you breathed, thick with the sense of the Ludus, was a constant reminder of your chosen path. The dust that settled on your clothes, the calluses on your hands, the familiar aches in your joints, these were the badges of your profession, the quiet testament to your unwavering dedication. You were a part of this place, inextricably linked to its rhythms, its routines, its quiet, enduring spirit. And as the years passed, and new gladiators arrived, and old ones departed, you remained, a constant, unwavering presence, the quiet heart of the Ludus. Your life was a testament to the power of the mundane, the beauty of the repetitive, the profound meaning found in the meticulous pursuit of a singular purpose. It was a life lived not in the spotlight, but in the quiet shadows, a life dedicated to the unseen work that underpinned the grand spectacle of Rome. And in this quiet dedication, you found your own unique form of glory, a glory that was not shouted from the rooftops, but whispered in the rustle of straw, the clang of steel, and the steady rhythm of a gladiator's breath. The quiet satisfaction of a day's work well done. The knowledge that you had done your part, that you had prepared your men to the best of your ability, these were the rewards that sustained you. They were not the cheers of the crowd, nor the accolades of emperors, but something far more enduring, far more profound. They were the quiet echoes of a life lived with purpose, a life dedicated to the meticulous art of training gladiators. And as the Roman night deepened, and the stars began their slow, silent march across the heavens, we leave Lucius to his quiet contemplation. The sounds of the ancient city fade into the background, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, the meticulous details of the Ludus, the scent of dust and leather, the steady thud of wooden swords, all begin to recede, dissolving into the soft edges of memory. Allow these images to drift, unhurried, through your mind, like clouds across a summer sky. There is no need for urgency, no need for effort. Simply let the gentle current of this quiet history carry you further into repose. May your dreams be as calm and as ordered as Lucius's day, filled with the peaceful echoes of a world long past. Good night, and may you find deep, restorative sleep. Let us consider the subtle intricacies of the gladiator's daily diet, a subject often overlooked in the grand narratives of Roman history, yet one of paramount importance to Lucius the lanista. The pulse, that thick, nourishing porridge, was not merely a bland gruel. It was a carefully formulated staple, designed to provide sustained energy and aid in muscle recovery. It was typically made from barley, a grain favored for its robust nutritional profile and its ability to be stored for long periods. Cato the cook would often add legumes, lentils, or chickpeas to the pulse, boosting its protein content. Sometimes, a handful of dried figs or dates would be stirred in, providing a touch of sweetness and additional calories. The preparation of this pulse was a ritual in itself. The barley would be soaked overnight, then slowly simmered for hours in large earthenware pots over a low fire, until it reached a thick, creamy consistency. The aroma, though not enticing in a gourmet sense, was comforting, a constant presence in the Ludus kitchen. You, Lucius, would occasionally taste it, not for pleasure, but to ensure its quality, its consistency, its adherence to the strict dietary regimen. A gladiator's performance was directly linked to his sustenance, and no detail was too small to escape your attention. The bread, a coarse, dark loaf made from whole wheat or barley flour, was another cornerstone of their diet. It was baked daily in the Ludus's own oven, its crust hard and chewy, its interior dense and filling. The smell of freshly baked bread, mingled with the wood smoke from the oven, was one of the more pleasant aromas of the Ludus. The gladiators would tear off chunks of it, dipping it into their pulse, or using it to sop up the juices from their occasional meat portions. It was simple, unadorned, but it provided the necessary carbohydrates for their strenuous training. Water, of course, was abundant, drawn from the communal well. It was cool and refreshing, a constant necessity in the dusty, sun-baked courtyard. You would ensure that large amphorae of water were always available, strategically placed around the training grounds, so that the gladiators could quench their thirst throughout the day. The occasional thin, sour wine diluted with water was offered during meals, not for intoxication, but for its perceived health benefits, and as a small concession to taste. It was a far cry from the rich, spiced wines enjoyed by the Roman elite, but it served its purpose. The overall dietary philosophy was one of practicality and efficiency. Every calorie, every nutrient was geared towards optimizing the gladiator's physical condition. There was no waste, no extravagance, only the steady, methodical provision of what was necessary for their demanding profession. This quiet, almost scientific approach to nutrition was another testament to the meticulous nature of your role as lanista. It was not about culinary delight, but about the precise engineering of human performance. The gladiators, for their part, rarely complained about the monotony of their diet. They understood its purpose, its necessity. They ate with a quiet discipline, their focus on the fuel it provided, rather than the pleasure it offered. It was another aspect of their training, another lesson in self-control and endurance. The sounds of their chewing, the clinking of their wooden bowls, the occasional sigh of satisfaction, these were the quiet sounds of sustenance, the rhythmic pulse of life in the Ludus. Beyond the physical and dietary aspects, the psychological conditioning of the gladiators was a subtle, ongoing process. You, Lucius, understood that a gladiator's mind was as crucial as his body. Fear, doubt, and despair were insidious enemies, capable of undermining even the most physically formidable warrior. Your approach was not one of harsh rhetoric or motivational speeches, but rather a steady, unwavering inculcation of discipline, routine, and a quiet acceptance of their fate. You would observe them during their training, looking for signs of mental fatigue, of wavering resolve. A gladiator who hesitated, who lacked conviction in his movements, was a gladiator who was already defeated. Your corrections were always calm, measured, never harsh or demeaning. You would explain the rationale behind each drill, each technique, emphasizing the importance of precision and focus. You would remind them that in the arena, there was no room for error, no space for doubt. The arena demanded absolute presence, absolute commitment. The hypnotic repetitions of the training drills served not only to build muscle memory, but also to instill a sense of rhythm, a meditative state that could quiet the anxieties of the mind. The steady thud of wood on wood, the rhythmic pounding of feet, the controlled breathing during exercises, these were all designed to create a sense of order, a predictable cadence in a life that was inherently unpredictable. You would also foster a sense of camaraderie, not of friendship, but of shared purpose. While gladiators often fought as individuals, they were part of a collective, a brotherhood of sorts. They relied on each other in training, pushing each other, learning from each other. You would encourage this mutual support, understanding that a strong collective spirit could bolster individual resolve. The quiet conversations in the evenings, the shared meals, the unspoken understanding that passed between men facing a common daunting future, these were the subtle bonds that held the Ludus together. You would also subtly manage their expectations. While glory and freedom were always a possibility, you never allowed them to dwell on such distant prospects. The focus was always on the present moment, on the next drill, the next meal, the next day. This grounded approach prevented disillusionment and kept their minds focused on the immediate tasks at hand. The stories you would recount of legendary gladiators were not tales of impossible heroism, but rather illustrations of meticulous technique, of unwavering discipline, of the quiet courage required to face one's fate. These were not thrilling narratives, but rather instructive parables, designed to reinforce the values of the Ludus. The psychological training was a slow, subtle process, like the erosion of stone by water, gradually shaping their minds, hardening their resolve, preparing them for the ultimate test. It was a testament to your understanding of human nature, your ability to guide men through the most challenging of circumstances with a quiet, unwavering hand. The sounds of their quiet contemplation, the soft sighs of resignation, the occasional murmur of shared experience, these were the subtle indicators of their internal world, a world you sought to influence with gentle persistence. The very air of the Ludus, imbued with the scent of effort and discipline, seemed to carry a silent message of resilience. The visual cues, too, played a part. The unyielding strength of the polis, the protective embrace of the armor, the steady gaze of their lanista, all contributed to a sense of security, a belief in the system. It was a quiet, almost imperceptible form of psychological warfare, waged not against an external enemy, but against the internal demons of fear and doubt. And in this quiet battle, you, Lucius, were the steadfast general, guiding your troops with a calm, unwavering resolve. The administrative duties of a lanista were far more extensive and mundane than any outsider might imagine. Beyond the training and the financial ledgers, there was a constant stream of paperwork, however rudimentary by modern standards. Records had to be kept for each gladiator: their origin, their physical attributes, their performance in training, their victories and defeats in the arena, their health status, and any notable incidents. These records, meticulously inscribed on wax tablets or papyrus scrolls, were essential for tracking progress, making strategic decisions about pairings in the arena, and for assessing the overall value of each gladiator. You would spend quiet hours in your small office, the flickering oil lamp casting long shadows, poring over these documents. The scratching of your stylus, the rustle of papyrus, these were the sounds of your administrative life. It was a task that demanded patience and an eye for detail, ensuring that every entry was accurate and up to date. The legal aspects were also a constant concern. Gladiators, being slaves or condemned, had a complex legal status. Contracts with magistrates for games, agreements with other ludi for exchanges or sales of gladiators, and the occasional disputes over ownership or terms of service, all required your careful attention. You would consult with scribes and legal advisors, ensuring that all documentation was in order, that the Ludus operated within the bounds of Roman law. These were not dramatic courtroom battles, but rather quiet, painstaking negotiations and reviews of legal texts. The language was formal, precise, and often tedious, but the consequences of error could be severe. The security of the Ludus was another ongoing responsibility. While the high walls and the discipline of the gladiators themselves provided a significant deterrent, you also employed a small contingent of guards, often retired soldiers or trusted freedmen. You would oversee their patrols, ensuring that the gates were secured, that no unauthorized persons entered the compound, and that the gladiators remained within their designated areas. It was a constant low-level vigilance, a quiet awareness of potential threats. The sounds of the guards' footsteps on the cobblestones, the creak of the gate as it was secured for the night, the distant challenge of a sentry, these were the sounds of security, the quiet assurance that the order of the Ludus was maintained. The management of the support staff, the pedagogues, the meditative, the armorers, the cooks, and the general laborers also fell under your purview. Each had their own needs, their own grievances, their own small triumphs and failures. You would mediate disputes, assign tasks, and ensure that the entire operation ran smoothly. It was a constant exercise in human management, a delicate balance of authority and empathy. The quiet conversations, the subtle negotiations, the occasional word of praise, or gentle reprimand, these were the tools of your leadership. It was a far cry from the roar of the arena, but it was just as vital to the success of the Ludus. The overall impression was one of a well-oiled machine, meticulously maintained, each part playing its role in a larger, predictable system. You, Lucius, were the master mechanic, the quiet engineer of this complex human enterprise. Your days were filled with 1,000 small tasks, each one contributing to the overarching goal of preparing men for the arena. It was a life of quiet dedication, of unwavering commitment to routine, a life that found its meaning in the meticulous pursuit of order and efficiency. And as the Roman night deepened and the stars began their slow, silent march across the heavens, we leave Lucius to his quiet contemplation. The sounds of the ancient city fade into the background, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The meticulous details of the Ludus, the scent of dust and leather, the steady thud of wooden swords, all begin to recede, dissolving into the soft edges of memory. Allow these images to drift, unhurried, through your mind, like clouds across a summer sky. There is no need for urgency, no need for effort. Simply let the gentle current of this quiet history carry you further into repose. May your dreams be as calm and as ordered as Lucius's day, filled with the peaceful echoes of a world long past. Good night, and may you find deep restorative sleep. Let us further explore the subtle nuances of the gladiator trainer's day, focusing on the interactions that, while seemingly minor, contributed significantly to the overall rhythm and atmosphere of the Ludus. Consider the morning ritual of the gladiators preparing for their first training session. After their ablutions and the simple meal of pulse, they would gather in the central courtyard, not with boisterous energy, but with a quiet, almost meditative focus. Each man would meticulously prepare his training gear. The leather straps of their manichae, the arm guards, would be carefully fastened, ensuring a snug fit that allowed for full range of motion while offering protection. The greaves, if worn, would be adjusted, their polished surfaces reflecting the faint morning light. The helmets, often heavy and restrictive, would be placed on the ground beside them, awaiting the moment of their use. You, Lucius, would observe this silent preparation, your gaze sweeping over each gladiator. You would notice the subtle differences in their approach, the meticulousness of a seasoned veteran, the slight fumbling of a new recruit, the quiet determination etched on the face of a man preparing for a particularly challenging drill. These small observations were invaluable, providing insights into their mental state, their readiness, their inner resolve. The sounds of this preparation were subtle, the soft creak of leather, the gentle clink of metal, the occasional sigh of exertion as a strap was tightened. These were the sounds of anticipation, the quiet prelude to the day's physical demands. The air would be still, save for these small sounds, and the distant, almost imperceptible hum of the awakening city beyond the Ludus walls. The training itself, while repetitive, was never truly monotonous for Lucius. Each gladiator presented a unique challenge, a distinct personality, a different set of strengths and weaknesses to be understood and molded. There was Drusus the Thracian, whose fiery temperament needed to be channeled, his aggression honed into precise, controlled movements. You would spend extra time with him, guiding his psyche, ensuring his slashes were not wild flurries, but calculated strikes. Then there was Marcus, the Murmillo, a man of immense physical strengths, but sometimes lacking in agility. Your focus with him would be on footwork, on teaching him to pivot his heavy frame with surprising speed, to use his scutum not just as a shield, but as a battering ram. And young Quintus the recruit, still struggling with the basic stances, patience was key with him, a steady hand, a constant reinforcement of the fundamentals. You would demonstrate the movements yourself, your aging body still capable of fluid grace, showing him the ideal form, the perfect balance. The sounds of the training ground were a constant symphony, the rhythmic thud of wooden swords against the palace, the sharp clang of blunted metal in sparring, the grunts of exertion, the controlled breathing of men pushing their limits. Your voice, calm and authoritative, would cut through the din, offering corrections, encouragement, or a quiet word of caution. The dust, a fine, ever-present powder, would rise with each movement, coating everything in a thin, gritty layer, a testament to the ceaseless effort. The sun, climbing higher in the sky, would cast long, dancing shadows, creating a dynamic, ever-changing tableau of effort and discipline. Even the brief pauses between drills were filled with purpose. Gladiators would rehydrate, wiping sweat from their brows, their eyes still focused, their minds already anticipating the next command. You would use these moments for quick individual feedback, a quiet word to adjust a grip, a nod of approval for a well-executed parry. These were not grand speeches, but small, precise interventions designed to incrementally improve their performance. The atmosphere was one of intense focus, a shared understanding of the high stakes involved in their profession. The afternoon sessions often involved more specialized training, tailored to the specific needs of gladiators preparing for an upcoming bout. For a retiarius, this might mean hours spent perfecting the throw of the net, practicing against a moving target, learning to anticipate the evasive maneuvers of a secutor. For a secutor, it would involve drills designed to counter the retiarius's agility to close the distance quickly and effectively. The complexity of these specialized drills required your full attention, your years of experience guiding each adjustment, each refinement. The sounds would become more varied, the swish of the net, the sharp hiss of the trident, the heavy thud of a secutor's charge. The visual spectacle, even in training, was captivating, a dance of power and precision. The light would begin to soften as the afternoon wore on, casting a warm golden glow over the courtyard. The shadows would lengthen, stretching across the dusty ground, marking the slow passage of time. The air, once thick with the heat of midday, would begin to cool, carrying the faint scent of evening from the surrounding Roman countryside. The evening routine was as structured as the morning. After the final training session, the gladiators would attend to their bodies, washing away the grime and sweat of the day, receiving massages and tending to minor injuries. The Medici would be busy, their hands moving with practiced skill, applying salves and bandages. The air in the healing room would be thick with the scent of herbs, a quiet sanctuary of recovery. The evening meal, simple and nourishing, was followed by a period of quiet leisure. Some gladiators would engage in low-stakes games of dice, their voices a soft murmur. Others would simply sit, staring into the gathering darkness, their minds perhaps drifting to memories of home or to the uncertain future. You, Lucius, would often use this time for quiet reflection, sitting on a low bench in the courtyard, observing your charges. The sky would deepen to a rich indigo, the first stars beginning to prick through the velvet darkness. The sounds of the city, now a distant hum, would blend with the chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. It was a time for contemplation, for assessing the day's progress, for planning the next. The quiet satisfaction of a day well spent, of duties meticulously performed, would settle over you. The weight of responsibility was ever present, but it was a familiar weight, one you carried with quiet dignity. The rhythm of the Ludus was a microcosm of the larger Roman world, a world built on order, discipline, and the relentless pursuit of purpose. And in this small, self-contained universe, you, Lucius, were the steady, unwavering center, the quiet architect of destinies. The passage of time, marked by the rising and setting of the sun, the changing of the seasons, and the slow, steady progress of your gladiators, was a constant, comforting presence. It was a life lived not for grand gestures or dramatic pronouncements, but for the meticulous execution of daily tasks, for the quiet dedication to a craft that was both brutal and beautiful. And as the Roman night deepened and the stars began their slow, silent march across the heavens, we leave Lucius to his quiet contemplation. The sounds of the ancient city fade into the background, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The meticulous details of the Ludus, the scent of dust and leather, the steady thud of wooden swords, all begin to recede, dissolving into the soft edges of memory. Allow these images to drift, unhurried through your mind, like clouds across a summer sky. There is no need for urgency, no need for effort. Simply let the gentle current of this quiet history carry you further into repose. May your dreams be as calm and as ordered as Lucius's day, filled with the peaceful echoes of a world long past. Good night, and may you find deep restorative sleep. Let us consider the subtle ways in which the Ludus interacted with the broader Roman society, even as it maintained its self-contained existence. While the training itself was internal, the purpose of that training was entirely external, the spectacle of the arena. This meant that Lucius, the lanista, had to maintain a delicate balance between the insular world of the Ludus and the demands of the Roman public and its magistrates. The occasional visits from potential patrons or officials, as previously mentioned, were one such interaction. These were formal affairs, often involving a tour of the facilities, a demonstration of the gladiator's skills, and a discussion of their availability and prowess. Lucius would present his gladiators with a quiet pride, highlighting their strengths, their discipline, their potential to entertain and impress. The conversations would revolve around the nuances of gladiator types, the historical precedents of certain fighting styles, and the logistical considerations of transporting and housing the gladiators for public games. These were not moments of drama, but rather of careful negotiation and presentation, ensuring that the Ludus maintained its reputation and secured future engagements. The contracts themselves were meticulously drawn up, detailing the number of gladiators, the duration of their service, the terms of payment, and the responsibilities of both parties. These documents, written on papyrus and sealed with wax, were a testament to the bureaucratic precision of Roman society, even in matters of entertainment. The scribes who drafted them would work with a quiet diligence, their quills scratching softly across the parchment, creating a tangible record of the agreement. The transportation of gladiators to the arena was another logistical exercise that required careful planning. Depending on the distance, this could involve a slow, deliberate march through the Roman streets, or a journey by cart or even by boat. The gladiators would be accompanied by guards, their presence a quiet deterrent to any potential trouble. The journey itself would be uneventful, a slow procession through the bustling city or the quiet countryside, a brief glimpse of the world beyond the Ludus walls. The sounds of the city, the rumble of carts, the shouts of vendors, the chatter of passers-by, would be a temporary intrusion into their disciplined silence. Upon arrival at the arena, the gladiators would be housed in secure holding cells, awaiting their turn in the spectacle. Even here, The routine of the Ludus would persist, albeit in a modified form. Meals would be provided, equipment would be inspected, and a final period of quiet contemplation would be encouraged. Lucius would be present, his calm demeanor, a reassuring presence amidst the nervous energy of the gladiators. He would offer final words of instruction, not of encouragement to fight bravely, but of reminders to adhere to their training, to maintain their form, to execute the techniques they had practiced countless times. The roar of the crowd, when it finally erupted, would be a distant, muffled sound within the confines of the holding cells, a prelude to the drama that awaited them. But for Lucius, it was merely the culmination of weeks and months of quiet, methodical preparation. The spectacle was for the crowd. The performance was a testament to his training. The aftermath of the games also involved a meticulous process. For those gladiators who survived, there would be medical attention, a period of recovery, and a return to the training regimen. For those who fell, there would be the somber task of arranging for their proper disposal, a quiet, respectful end to their service. The armor and weapons would be collected, cleaned, and repaired, ready for the next engagement. The financial accounts would be updated, the earnings tallied, the expenses recorded. It was a cycle of preparation, performance, and aftermath, each phase executed with a quiet, unwavering precision. The emotional toll of this profession, while rarely acknowledged, was a constant subtle undercurrent. Lucius, as lanista, bore the weight of responsibility for the lives of his gladiators. While he maintained a professional distance, he was not immune to the human cost of their profession. The quiet moments of reflection, the silent prayers offered to the gods, the occasional sigh that escaped his lips in the solitude of his room. These were the subtle indicators of the burden he carried. It was a burden he accepted with quiet dignity, a part of the unspoken contract of his life. The changing political landscape of Rome, while seemingly distant from the daily routines of the Ludus, also cast its long shadow. Emperors rose and fell, wars were fought, and the whims of the populace shifted. These larger events could impact the demand for games, the availability of resources, and even the legal status of gladiators. Lucius would stay informed, not through active participation in politics, but through careful observation of the news and quiet conversations with merchants and officials. He was a pragmatist, adapting the Ludus to the prevailing circumstances, ensuring its continued operation and the well-being of his charges. The subtle shifts in the rhetoric of the forum, the changing faces in the imperial court, these were the distant tremors that occasionally reached the quiet confines of the Ludus, requiring minor adjustments to the grand plan. The construction and maintenance of the Ludus itself was a continuous if slow process. The buildings, made of stone and wood, required constant upkeep. Leaky roofs had to be repaired, crumbling walls reinforced, and the training grounds regularly resurfaced with fresh sand. You would oversee these tasks, not with a sense of urgency, but with a methodical attention to detail. The sounds of construction, the chipping of stone, the sawing of wood, the rhythmic thud of hammers, would occasionally punctuate the quiet hum of the Ludus, a reminder of the ongoing effort required to maintain the physical infrastructure of their world. The artisans and laborers who performed these tasks would work with a quiet diligence, their movements practiced and efficient. They were another part of the intricate web of support that allowed the Ludus to function. The tools of their trade, chisels, hammers, trowels, levels, were handled with the same respect and care as the gladiator's weapons, each serving its purpose in the grand scheme of things. The very stones of the Ludus, worn smooth by countless footsteps in the passage of time, bore the silent imprint of this continuous effort. The slow, almost imperceptible process of decay and renewal was a constant backdrop to the daily routines, a quiet testament to the enduring nature of human endeavor. The passage of time within the Ludus was not marked by dramatic events, but by these small, continuous processes, the gradual wear of equipment, the slow growth of a gladiator's skill, the subtle changes in the seasons, the quiet rhythm of construction and repair. It was a life lived in the present, focused on the meticulous execution of each task, each detail contributing to the larger overarching purpose. And in this quiet, unassuming existence, Lucius found a profound sense of meaning, a deep satisfaction in the steady, unwavering pursuit of order and efficiency. The sounds of the ancient city fade into the background, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The meticulous details of the Ludus, the scent of dust and leather, the steady thud of wooden swords, all begin to recede, dissolving into the soft edges of memory. Allow these images to drift, unhurried, through your mind, like clouds across a summer sky. There is no need for urgency, no need for effort. Simply let the gentle current of this quiet history carry you further into repose. May your dreams be as calm and as ordered as Lucius's day, filled with the peaceful echoes of a world long past. Good night, and may you find deep, restorative sleep. Let us now consider the quiet moments of reflection that punctuated Lucius's day, those brief interludes when the relentless rhythm of the Ludus softened, allowing for a deeper contemplation of his role and the lives entrusted to his care. These were not moments of dramatic introspection, but rather subtle shifts in awareness, like the gentle turning of a page in a very old book. Often these moments would occur in the late afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent, casting long golden shadows across the courtyard. The gladiators would be engaged in their final drills, their movements becoming more fluid, more practiced, imbued with the quiet confidence that comes from hours of repetition. Lucius would stand apart, perhaps leaning against a cool stone pillar, his gaze sweeping over the scene. He would observe the play of light on their bronze skin, the subtle shifts in their expressions, the way their bodies moved with a grace born of discipline, the sounds of their training, the rhythmic thud of wood, the sharp clang of metal, the grunts of exertion, would blend into a harmonious hum, a soundtrack to his quiet thoughts. He would think of the origins of these men. The captured warrior from Germania, his fierce pride slowly yielding to the discipline of the Ludus. The condemned criminal from the Roman underworld, finding a strange sense of purpose in his forced profession. The impoverished free man, seeking a desperate path to glory, and a chance at a new life. Each had a story, a past that had led them to these walls, to this fate. Lucius did not dwell on their individual tragedies or triumphs, but rather on the collective tapestry they formed, the diverse threads woven into the fabric of the Ludus. He saw them not as individuals to be pitied or celebrated, but as raw material to be shaped, honed, and prepared. His responsibility was not to judge their past, but to ensure their present training was meticulous and their future performance as perfect as possible. The scent of dust and sweat mingled with the faint aroma of evening flowers from a nearby garden would fill the air, a complex olfactory tapestry that spoke of both hardship and the enduring beauty of the world. He would feel the cool stone beneath his hand, the rough texture a grounding presence. These were the sensory details that anchored him to the present moment, allowing his mind to drift without losing its connection to the reality of his surroundings. Sometimes, his thoughts would turn to the arena itself, not with anticipation of the spectacle, but with a quiet, almost academic interest in the mechanics of the combat. He would mentally replay past bouts, analyzing the strategies, the techniques, the subtle errors that led to victory or defeat. He would consider the crowd, that vast, amorphous entity whose roar could elevate a man to godlike status or condemn him to oblivion. He understood their hunger for spectacle, their need for drama, but for him, the arena was a testing ground, a stage for the demonstration of his craft. The drama was for them, the precision was for him. He would consider the weight of the armor, the balance of the weapons, the specific vulnerabilities of each gladiator type. It was a complex equation, a constant calculation of risk and reward, of strength and weakness. His mind, though outwardly calm, was a hive of quiet analysis, constantly seeking to optimize, to refine, to perfect. These moments of reflection were not about personal ambition or emotional indulgence. They were an extension of his professional duties, a quiet form of mental training, ensuring that his own skills as a lanista remained as sharp and as honed as the gladiator's swords. He was constantly learning, constantly adapting, constantly seeking to improve his understanding of the brutal art he oversaw. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, the sounds of the Ludus would begin to soften. The gladiators would gather for their evening meal, their voices a low murmur, their bodies weary but their spirits imbued with the quiet satisfaction of a day's work well done. Lucius would join them, partaking of the simple fare, his presence a quiet, reassuring anchor. He would observe their interactions, the subtle bonds of camaraderie that formed between men who shared a common, daunting fate. He saw the quiet acts of support, the unspoken understanding, the shared resilience that permeated their lives. These were the moments when the humanity of the Ludus shone through, a quiet light in a world often defined by its harshness. After the meal, as the stars began to emerge in the vast, dark expanse of the Roman night, Lucius would often retire to his small Spartan room. He would sit at his wooden table, perhaps with a scroll of ancient texts, or simply in quiet contemplation. The flickering light of an oil lamp would cast long, dancing shadows, creating an atmosphere of peaceful solitude. He would listen to the sounds of the night, the distant murmur of the city, the chirping of crickets, the soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. These were the sounds that accompanied his thoughts, the gentle soundtrack to his quiet existence. He would reflect on the day's events, on the progress of each gladiator, on the subtle shifts in their demeanor. He would consider the challenges that lay ahead, the upcoming games, the new recruits, the ever-present need to maintain the delicate balance of the Ludus. It was a life of quiet purpose, a life dedicated to the meticulous preparation of men for their fate, and in this dedication, he found a profound sense of meaning, a deep, abiding contentment. The very air he breathed, thick with the scents of the Ludus, was a constant reminder of his chosen path. The dust that settled on his clothes, the calluses on his hands, the familiar aches in his joints, these were the badges of his profession, the quiet testament to his unwavering dedication. He was a part of this place, inextricably linked to its rhythms, its routines, its quiet, enduring spirit. And as the years passed, and new gladiators arrived and old ones departed, he remained, a constant, unwavering presence, the quiet heart of the Ludus. His life was a testament to the power of the mundane, the beauty of the repetitive, the profound meaning found in the meticulous pursuit of a singular purpose. It was a life lived not in the spotlight, but in the quiet shadows, a life dedicated to the unseen work that underpinned the grand spectacle of Rome. And in this quiet dedication, he found his own unique form of glory, a glory that was not shouted from the rooftops, but whispered in the rustle of straw, the clang of steel, and the steady rhythm of a gladiator's breath. The quiet satisfaction of a day's work well done, the knowledge that you had done your part, that you had prepared your men to the best of your ability, these were the rewards that sustained you. They were not the cheers of the crowd, nor the accolades of emperors, but something far more enduring, far more profound. They were the quiet echoes of a life lived with purpose, a life dedicated to the meticulous art of training gladiators. And as the Roman night deepened and the stars began their slow, silent march across the heavens, we leave Lucius to his quiet contemplation. The sounds of the ancient city fade into the background, replaced by the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. The meticulous details of the Ludus, the scent of dust and leather, the steady thud of wooden swords, all begin to recede, dissolving into the soft edges of memory. Allow these images to drift unhurried through your mind, like clouds across a summer sky. There is no need for urgency, no need for effort. Simply let the gentle current of this quiet history carry you further into repose. May your dreams be as calm and as ordered as Lucius's day, filled with the peaceful echoes of a world long past. Good night, and may you find deep restorative sleep.